Okay, remember that they are changing my voice. This is Dionysus Part 5. Okay, so before I get into this video, let's talk about some key ideas here. The word economist has the word mist in it, like mystery cults, right? Babylon mystery. Also, Dionysus is a deity that is the most widespread in the ancient world. That part is key. And he's a deity of disassociation and murder for rape by deception. And his initiates, his cult members, they reenact the betrayal of early pharaohs. And one in particular who is lost in time. We don't know exactly which pharaoh was betrayed in a very profound way, was murdered while people pretended that their succession was valid. So he's also a deity of people who are pretending that they have a valid succession. And that is not me. I would never do that. That's despicable. I never have any part in that. Okay, so let's go over some of the stuff we went over already here. I bothered to write down the transcript, to type it up, even though it hurt my wrists and my hands. They make it very hard for me to take notes. And I can't even watch the videos. I have to read the annotations. But I'm sure you can see that my explanations are better than other people's. According to legends and mystery cults that are found in Orphic hymns, Dionysus is cooked and eaten by evil titans as a child, and he had his heart saved by Athena. He was resurrected by Zeus through Semele. Zeus struck the titans with lightning, and they were consumed by fire. From their ashes came the first humans. They are said to have had both the evil nature of the titans and the divine nature of the so-called gods. Okay. Things are about to get very potent very soon, so I thought I would go over this again. The central tale of Orphism revolves around Dionysus' torture, torment, and murder by the Titans and resurrection. Now, again, that's Orphism. In another version, he's tortured by the Bacchans, okay, because he was spying on them. We'll get to that. But in the central tale of Orphism, and the word Orphism is like the word Orcus, which is a satanic deity in Greco-Roman mythology, a deity of oaths and so on and so forth, trying to get people to take oaths and then holding it against them when it is not right to do that. It's not right to trick someone into taking an oath and then holding it against them. That's what the followers of Orcus do. That's why orcs have such a bad reputation in mythology. Okay. So again, that's the central tale of Orphism, which revolves around the Titans torturing and murdering Dionysus. The divine essence of humanity is said to be in the bodily form of the Titans, and the divine essence of the soul is said to come from Dionysus for liberation from the material world. Right? Going back to that disassociation. Now, why are they disassociating? To maintain the social order of Zeus, who's said to be an older Dionysus, right? It's phases of a sick cult of the emperor and his family's game. Cult of the families of the cults, right? The priests of the cults. A sick game in regards to those things. And so as they're trying to reinforce the social order, they got a bunch of people who were plebeians, second-class citizens as opposed to patricians, first-class citizens, slaves, LGBT people who lived a certain way who were frowned on in Roman society. But LGBT people were more like Freemasons or something who played off more quite often. They were quite often among the first-class citizens. Okay, so the Dionysian rites involved a ceremonial cleansing that involved reliving the god's suffering and demise. Those who aren't initiated are said to go through endless cycles of reincarnation. This has implications on how people who are not stupid enough to be initiated are treated. So the endless cycles of reincarnation don't have to happen, when you look at it in terms of the interpretation of what they're getting at, it doesn't necessarily happen when your flesh dies. And they're not saying that your soul magically comes back to the world. It's saying that these people wake up every day and they're stuck in the same cycle. That is the main way to interpret what they're getting at there. So they're saying people aren't in their stupid cult, are stuck in a cycle of suffering, where people who disassociate, magically have some secret knowledge or something. Obviously, it's outrageous. It's stupid. You see it in the New Age. You see it in the churches, mosques, and synagogues these days. People are just disassociating. They're Dionysian cultures and religions. I would compare it to, the myth of Psyche. One of the myths of Psyche is where she's kidnapped, and she's being raped again and again. She's held captive by people who are in the Greco-Roman system, the mythological system. And so she disassociates and tries to make the best of it, as their sex slave. And that's like the core message from the stories of Psyche and Eros and Aphrodite. Deities of erotic desire. Is that erotic desire is evil? And that if you've been tricked into that cycle, that you're evil. That's why, we see this, that Aphrodite is said to be worshipped with Dionysus, as the main deities of the Middle East, for example. We went over that in the other video. Because they have fake love and satanic pagan sex. We'll get to that later on. Let me just get through these notes here. I got quite a few notes to go through here. And this stuff is very key here. So keep watching. So they are said to need secret wisdom that they must pass on to Hades to avoid the fate of the non-initiate. There's a cypress tree by the halls of Hades. There you go with the tree of knowledge. It's one of its forms in the mythology and the stories of the myths. People are warned not to go near the spring, and they are asked by guardians with sharp minds, "What do you seek in the misty shadow of Hades?" And there we go again with the word mist, right? The misty shadow of Hades, of hell. Now, many people argue that hell is not the same as Hades. If you research Greek mythology enough, you look at comments enough, you'll see people make that argument almost certainly, especially if you make the argument that it is. Hell is actually a Norse deity, and the Norse mythology, we'll get to that later, it very much is a part of the greater Greco-Roman system. It's like this ancient satanic system that covered much of the known world at the time, what would be described as the known world for people who live in that area. Europe, the Middle East, parts of Asia, North Africa, especially Northeast Africa, what have you. So again, it's the misty shadow of Hades. Darkness, chaos, the deeper implications of what a shadow is in nature. They are told to say, "I am the child of earth and starry heaven, Gaia and Erinos," I believe it is, "and I am parched with thirst, and I perish. But quick, give me refreshing water to drink from the lake of memory." And then they get the whale to speak to the underworld king Pluto, and they get a drink from the lake of memory. And Pluto is said to come from Pluton, I believe it is, which means the riches under the earth. So Pluto is quite often associated with Hades, and there's a connection there regardless, of how you slice it. So in having had that drink, they go along the so-called sacred road that the other initiates in the mysteries, of Bacchanalia, of Dionysus, of Liber travel. So the ones who follow these directions into heaven are said to be saved by various demons in the story here. This story is said to influence Pythagorean, philosophies, Platonic philosophies, Platonist, and Judeo-Christian theologies. So the various philosophies of other groups that are lying about God. Now, when we look at Christianity as a group, we look at it as a historian who's trying to be honest. You look at it as an honest person, as a scientist who's trying to be honest. You know that the vast majority of Christian denominations must be wrong, if not all of them. Why? Because they all don't agree on everything. So when we see that there's philosophies influencing people, okay, for example, white supremacy, and they start their own churches and they say, hey, this is what we believe, like Christian identity, which is said to be a white supremacist Christian movement, but certainly all of them are, you know, Baptist, Lutheran, Methodist, Pentecostal. I would argue they're all white supremacist lies. I'm certain of it, okay? That you have to ask yourself, what are the philosophies that were there in the area that were influencing them when they just said, hey, what if we do it this way? Or I have an idea. Okay, they had a pre-existing philosophy, a pre-existing belief system. So they're right to say that when we're talking about the religions, the organized religions of Christianity, Judaism, Islam, you know, Pythagorean cults, what have you, Freemasonry, the organized groupings of philosophies and religions, that they're influenced by the pre-existing philosophy. There's no other way, philosophy, there's no other way it could be. And Dionysian worship and mysteries and mythology, okay, were at one point damn near the bell that rings the loudest, if not the bell that rings the loudest. He was said to be the most widespread of the ancient deities at one point. But his worship doesn't go that far back. In fact, Cretan religion doesn't go that far back. Only African religion goes way, 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 way back. So no matter how you slice it, Dionysian mysteries are a response to the Royal African Falcon martial art order, because martial arts, fighting with sharpened spears and coming up with tactics and getting people to come into a military formation, a disciplined formation, a disciplined civilization, predates all known religions by far. And we see that martial arts clearly evolves more than religions did if you can separate the two ideas. For example, what I mean by that is martial arts as martial art religions. Okay, so we think of like a Shaolin monk and compare him to like your average, your average shallow Christian on YouTube or something. Do you think that she is deeper than the Shaolin monk? Almost certainly not. Right? They're just a shallow person, shallow American, hey guys, kind of thing. Kind of Pee Wee Herman, Pat Robertson, these kind of guys just giving some kind of shallow speech and a shallow interpretation. When we're talking about martial arts, you kind of get into the essence of nature. And to get to the supernatural, you have to go through the natural. However, Buddhism doesn't go very deep compared to the Royal African Falcon martial art order. For many reasons. One, it forsakes the idea of romantic love. How deep can you be if you reject the idea of true love? When God is the creator, man is the creation, and over time, people have evolved, like other animals in nature, to be reproductive vessels. So what is the divine and deep and profound nature of reproduction? If your religion doesn't truly grasp that, then it is incomplete. So we see that the true religion must have martial art components, and it must have a profound romantic component, among other things. Other existential things. Why are we here? What is the purpose of life? What have you? Okay. Okay, so Dionysus was opposed by Pentheus, his cousin. And he was torn into pieces by the Bacchans when he attempted to spy on their activities. So you hear that curiosity killed the cat. Dionysus is associated with lions, tigers, leopards, dolphins, right? The cats and the dolphins. So he's torn to pieces as he's spying on the Bacchans. Now, what are the Bacchans doing? Well, they are sexually immoral. They are animalistic. They are evil. So when you see that association with Dionysus, with the satyrs and the Bacchans and the Maenads, right? These fairy-like females who are assisting him. They're evil. So we can clearly ascertain that Dionysus is resurrected as evil, which makes him an antichrist, and he's one of the main candidates for the false depiction of Christ. along with Serapis. Dionysus fits the description better than any deity, I'd say, when it comes to what is the pinpointed Antichrist. Athenians were punished with impotence for dishonoring the Dionysus cult. Their husbands' resistance wasn't enough. Women took to the hells wearing fawn skins and crowns of ivy and shouting ritual cry Eva, forming unholy bands and waving the fennel wands with, the grapevine imagery and tipped with ivy with pine cone on top. They danced by torchlight to the rhythm of the Dionysian tunes. They had the double pipe and the handheld drum. They are under the devil's inspiration. The Bacchans were believed to possess occult powers and the ability to charm snakes and suckle animals, as well as a supernatural strength that enabled them to tear living victims to pieces before indulging in a ritual feast. Now, when they're talking about demons in the Bible, okay, keep in mind, just like in the tale of Dionysus, the Bible is like the mysteries of Dionysus in a sense, where there's a way to interpret it as humanity's being punished for being evil. And so the story is put in a way that's confusing. And obviously it's pure evil to take part in the Dionysian mysteries, as it is pure evil to be a Christian in a way that, you see everyone being a Christian in a way, in that way, right? In that way, okay? In a way that's like propaganda, in a way that, praise Jesus and God sent his son to die for your sins. That's not what the Bible is about. Just like the Dionysian mysteries, the Bible is about the betrayal of Pharaoh. Search your souls. Long ago, there were African leaders that went beyond Mandela and Martin Luther King. Righteous warriors that were betrayed by the masses of people because of the trade routes. Because Set and Dionysus are deities of foreigners. Dionysus is a form of Set. Dionysus embodies Set. Dionysus is Set. Zeus, Baal in the Bible, what have you. The mysteries of Dionysus are the story of betraying the royal African falcon, leader of all of humanity, the King of Kings, the King of Kings. What was the discussion in ancient Egypt? What inspired the Bible? What inspired the Bible was the discussion of martial arts in ancient Egypt. Tati, being straight and honest through the use of a stick. The tree of life, the stick, the cross, the crossing of the swords, the crossing of the sticks, the crossing of the paths. So the Dionysian rituals reenact with a mocker. It's like Dionysus is known to mock and do role reversal. Role reversal. Cronus, who's related to Dionysus, another deity of role reversal. And revelry, the Saturnalia. Dionysus is depicted as a satyr. So they're mocking the murder of Pharaoh, as Set is said to be the little g, the demon of this world. The so-called God of this world. Satan in the Bible, look it up. It leads the whole world astray. How? By getting them to disassociate from reality. Because the way is the truth and a morally precise life. And where do we see that occurring? You don't see it occurring anywhere but with me. And where do I come from? What is the quarry from which I was cut? The Royal African Falcon Martial Art Order. Not from English royals or, Jewish billionaires or anyone else. But from the Royal Black African transcending racial supremacy, mulatto, African Falcon Martial Art Order. The fair reproductive cycle, the pharaoh, the har being a word for Horus, the hero, versus the role reversal that allowed them to convince you when you're younger, for example, that Horus is, to them, what they were trying to convince you of, a mere pagan deity. There's fake forms of Horus, there's fake forms of Jesus. There's fake depictions of Horus, there's fake depictions of Jesus. The Dionysus mysteries influenced the authors of the Bible, no matter how you slice it. They influenced them. Their stories are very similar. Jacob and Esau, Dionysus, and I believe it is Pentheus or something. Their stories are very similar. I've been studying this on and off for quite some time now. Back in like 2019-20, I spent quite a bit of time studying Greco-Roman mythology. I spent quite a bit of time studying Egyptian mythology. And I spent a lot of time contemplating the Igbo religious stories. And I can tell you with certainty, after looking into this as an honest person with a pure heart, being guided by God Almighty as the top martial artist ever possible, that the Dionysian mysteries aren't just said to have influenced Christianity, they influenced Christianity. And so did the story of Horus. In fact, Dionysus is said to be a form of Osiris, who was made to tell the story of the betrayal of Pharaoh by the followers of Set. Bottom line, that is what the mysteries of Dionysus are. The mysteries of Dionysus are nearly identical to at least some of the mysteries and mythologies of the Osirian cults. You even have the word Isis, Dionysus, Dios and Isis. Zeus and Isis, the rape of Isis, the betrayal of Osiris, the death of Osiris. Osiris, how we wept. I laid on the temple steps. The hidden symbols in the Atef crown. How could Set strike Osiris down? With the ram head at the base, how could Set show his face? As they say, he was Osiris, the betrayed righteous Pharaoh, the Lord that they call the Lord of the Black. And when he died, we all felt that. And that is what the Dionysian mysteries are about. It is about people who are less black than I am, but mixed with black nonetheless because of their particular festivities. The plebeians, the slaves, which include black slaves, and the LGBT people and others, mixing together. Some people of noble birth, quote unquote noble birth. Nobel. Bell and the Dragon Ball, what have you. Okay. Let's cut this video short because I'm running out of memory on my phone, even though I'm on a roll here. I feel very saddened by the situation. Okay. So, remember, Dionysus had many names, including bold-faced. The word bold and the word bull are connected. And the cows, which are said to be sacred in India, they're connected to the Dionysian rites, and we'll talk about the Brahmin who visited Caesar, perhaps in the next video, if I cut this video short, which it looks like I'm going to. So Dionysus is said to be called, I believe, Iacchus. And they talk about his descent and return from Hades to resurrect the dead. The plot unfolds with Dionysus disguising as Hercules, alongside his servant Xanthias riding a donkey, like the symbol of the Democratic Party. But the symbol of the Republican Party is also Dionysus related. Look at the expression, look at the spirit. The animal is not so important. There's bulls associated with Dionysus, dolphins and cats. You know, big cats, lions, tigers, leopards. Certainly, because of the Indian connection, there's also elephants associated with Dionysus. And there's elephants in Africa. So Dionysus inquires about the route to the underworld to bring back the poet. I believe his name is something like, well, I had to read the annotations so I couldn't read it. So he goes there to bring back a dead poet. And he talks about the potential challenges he might face, because it's the road of a warrior. To go to Hades and to resurrect the dead, you have to fight the enemies of God. So the story is superimposed on the road, just like Hercules is superimposed on Heros, the hero, Horus, the true hero, the King of Kings. Because what is Greek mythology without the true story of the King of Kings when Greece is merely over the Mediterranean Sea? It's not that far away. You just get on a boat, you're in Greece before you know it. It's across the sea from Africa. And notice water has symbolic meaning. And the Greeks used to take that journey as part of their rituals, and they would go into Egypt. And when the Greeks occupied Egypt, they built temples in Egypt. There's strong connections there. After receiving guidance from Hercules, the duo embark on their journey. Dionysus is conveyed across the lake by somebody, while Xanthias, being a slave, has to circumvent it, which has, go back to the lake of memory. In the Bible, the sea of people, the water standing for the Spirit of God. So they're saying that the slaves have to find a way around it because they're not being allowed to have the Spirit, which has implications on the social order. And again, keep in mind, the people who made the Dionysian rituals are evil. They're Setians. To some degree, they probably feel bad about the death of Osiris. As Osiris, in some versions, is said to be the brother of Set. In fact, I believe that's every version. In some version, Horus is also one of their brothers. In some versions of the Egyptian mythology, Horus is said to be the son of Osiris and Isis. And Isis saves the phallus, the penis of Osiris, while Athena is said to save the heart of Dionysus. So again, Osiris and Dionysus being connected. So there you have the heart and the penis, which has to do with creation, reproduction, has to do with virility, masculinity, and has to do with heart. What truly makes a man isn't merely the penis, it is his heart. The Lord weighs the heart. But it has to do with reproductive religions, if you will. Religions where religion overlaps with reproduction, marriage, fertility. Okay, there was so-called holy, so-called orgies. Right? They're not holy, they're unholy orgies. Demonic orgies where they're trying to bring back the satanic spirits of their ancestors who murdered Dionysus. So when you are part of a Dionysian cult, you're a Satanist who is reproducing with the offspring of those who killed the prophets, like it says in the Bible. Matthew 23. They say that if they were there in the days of their ancestors, that they would not have taken part with them in shedding the blood of the prophets. So they testify against themselves that you are the Dionysian type filth who killed Osiris, so to speak. And then he says, finish what you started. I mean, the world is going to transform into hell. Where did they start it? Here on this physical planet. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, and everywhere else on this planet. You who killed the prophets, you who betrayed the Royal African Falcon Martial Art Order like you betrayed Martin Luther King and Mandela. How I will seal you in hell when my flesh dies. When during my life I desired to gather you together like a hen gathers her chicks, but you were not willing. And you kept on with the Dionysian mysteries. You're drunk off the blood of the saints, drunk off the hallucinogenic drink of the Bacchae cults, of Sabazius, of Viacus, Zagreus, and Zeus. How you have raped and tricked Demeter and Kore until you are wicked to your very core. But the wine will turn to fire. And though you hide in caves, as I said before, you should have behaved. And now all your souls and hopes are fucking slaves.